Hey guys, welcome back to another Weird Wednesday. I'm Ashers, and this is.
Rebecca the Ghost Guide.
Oh my gosh, Rebecca, I'm so excited to talk to you. You have no idea.
Well, thanks for having me.
I don't know. You might have like dreamt about me all week or something. Like, there's
Uh,
this weird redheaded woman in my dream thinking about me. I don't know.
if that makes you feel better, I'll just sit here and nod my head. How about that?
That does make me feel better. Thank you for giving me validation and reassurance. I appreciate it. You're my favorite guest so far already. Um, so there's that. It's going to be great. What have you been up to? How's your weekend?
Oh my goodness, I'm so grateful. I had a great weekend. The weather was just perfect. I'm on the Carolina coast, and it was great. So I did a lot of outdoor things. Went to some markets. Went to a pumpkin patch with some friends. I saw Waiting for Godot, the play, for the first time from a local
Oh.
theater company. I did not understand it. Maybe I'm just not at that high level of theatrical understanding. Maybe that's the point. I still need to look up what in the world that show's about if anybody's seen it. But yeah, it was a great time just spending time outside in nature and on the river and that sort of thing. So I'm grateful to have had a wonderful weekend. How
That
about yourself?
Yeah, no, that sounds fantastic. We here in Ohio didn't have the great weather that you guys had. It was it was kind of nasty, which was unfortunate because we do so I've said this before on the show, but I'll say it to you because you might not know. So Fairborn, Ohio is kind of dubbed Halloween City, Ohio. And Fairborn, Ohio has this like strip, like this main strip in the city where they have this like series of Halloween stores. It's all owned by this one family. It's called Foy's.
Mhm.
And every shop has an individual theme. There's costumes, there's a haunted house shop, there's all kinds of stores. And then on that strip, of course, are other strange stores who have taken place there. One of them happens to be, I've talked about her plenty on the show. One of my friends, she owns the Secret Chamber House of Oddities and Artwork. It is an oddity shop and a haunted museum and a myriad of other things.
Love
Um,
that.
but they did their festival this past weekend. They do a Halloween festival every year, of course. And I usually really like to go. We were going to go, but it just rained, and it was like
Ah.
constant. And it wasn't like torrential downpour. It wasn't like thunderstorm. It was just like a constant drizzle. It was always wet outside.
Oh, so you got like Pacific Northwest weather for a little bit. That's what it
Yes,
sounds like.
we really did. It was awful. So it's like, even if you, bundled yourself up and took your umbrella, it didn't matter. Like the rain was coming up and sideways and from the ground. It was just moist. I don't
Uh,
so I didn't go do that, but you know what? That's okay. Listen, I live here. I can go there anytime, so it's not a huge deal. But a little bit disappointing. So it was a stay indoors and kind of watch some movies type of weekend, which is fantastic because I feel like I haven't done a lot of like Halloween season things this year. It's just flying by. I don't know. It's unfortunate. I'm sad about it. But that's okay. I have a annual Halloween party every year. I'm getting ready for that. This next weekend's going to be insane because I'm going to a local event, and then Saturday's my party. Tomorrow, which by the time you guys hear this, I will have gone. I'm going to a Cradle of Filth concert, which I am probably entirely too old for. I'm a little concerned about getting my ass beat, but
I wish you well, protection, all that good stuff.
I appreciate it. So it'll be. I'm sure I'll have a lot more to talk about next week, unless my mouth is still swollen shut from or something. Um, we'll see how it goes. But yeah, so I didn't do much actually. I've been showing my daughter different, I guess, classic movies. We've been watching different horror movies. I showed her Child's Play. My daughter's 11. She watched Child's Play with me. Pure curiosity from her part. She wanted to watch it. I think
I
she
love
enjoyed
that.
it. I don't know. Yeah. The other contender is the original Halloween. We haven't watched it yet. So we will before the season's over. And hopefully it's a new thing we can bond over. So
I
we'll
love
see,
that. Yeah.
we'll see how that goes. But I did have some things that I wanted to advertise this week. Actually, I don't have news this week, really, as far as typical news goes, there's just sometimes it's like that, and it's not very weird in the world, unfortunately. But I did do a show. I did two of them this past week, and both of them you can go listen to right now. Both of them with the same people. I got to speak with Ron and Joe and Brandon from Wild and Weird, West Virginia. And of course, I went on their show, Wild and Weird Radio. We talked about atmospheric beasts. Now, I know,
Hmm.
Rebecca, you're a paranormal type of person, but do you know about atmospheric beasts?
No, please enlighten me. I'm curious if it kind of crosses over on some things that I'm aware of.
It probably does. It's very strange. So, atmospheric beasts are kind of like the idea that we have these UFOs, so unidentified flying objects, but erase the saucer UFO from your mind. We have UFOs, but they're living creatures.
Okay.
So some people, when they see them, there's different shapes and forms, but probably the most popular and the most widespread is like people see these like jellyfish in the sky.
Huh.
It's very strange.
Okay.
Very strange.
I'm not knocking it. I'm still listening. I'm just,
It's
thinking
very
about it. Yeah.
now, like I said, they frequently there can be other shapes. Some people just see like these translucent ribbon type things, but whatever they are seem to be alive and they make noise and all kinds of stuff. There's a wide variety. We do talk about that over there on their show. There is, it seems kind of ridiculous, and it does, but there is potentially something to it because the Chinese military had a run in with one of these things. And it's very well documented back in the 90s. So go check that out. We also did a live stream. I was on their live stream Thursday just to talk about a little bit more strangeness. And it was just kind of a grab bag of variety of weird, but it was a lot of fun. They're fantastic individuals. You should be listening to the show anyway. And if you're not, now's your chance to do it. Now you have a reason to. And you should definitely go check them out and listen to us talk about these weird, strange sky jelly creatures. They're weird. I
Okay.
don't
I
know.
do have a question just
Okay.
because it might match up. So, with these creatures, are they always huge or can they be small?
Well, I think it's hard to tell because we don't know how close they are.
Hmm.
Some people, some of them are like, 20 feet. They estimate 20 feet, but I don't think anybody's really said that they're small. We did talk about rods. I don't know if you've heard of rods or skyfish, um, as
No.
Wise
Wow.
Woman calls them.
I'm becoming enlightened here. Yes. Well, here's the thing. The reason why I ask, and I don't want to cut you off. I had a consultation with somebody over a week ago
Mhm.
who clairvoyant, seeing things, and I helped them figure out a bit more about that language. But they were the first person to ever come to me to say that they had seen a kind of jellyfish thing, but it was like near the ceiling of their room. And the way that you described it, I
Interesting.
was like, huh, that's interesting, isn't it? How they
Hmm.
kind of they could tie in together. So yeah.
That is interesting. I know, like at least in the instance of the military one, I mean, it was large, but I because of what I personally think that they are, I wouldn't be surprised if there were small versions of it. Not at all. And I wouldn't be surprised if sometimes some of these people saw them even outside and assumed that they were larger than they were, not knowing the distance, how far away they are. Maybe a lot closer than we assume they are. That is really interesting and topical. Hmm.
Yeah, right. I was like, how interesting that that happened not even 2 weeks ago. And that was the first
Yeah.
time I had heard of that kind. And I looked into the energy of the situation and it didn't feel like something, malicious or negative or anything. We just kind of
Yeah.
did what we could to figure out what in the world that was. And it was just sort
No.
of there. But that's the first time I heard somebody else describe a kind of energy that
Anything like that, right?
floated, that looked like a kind of like a jellyfish. So,
Like, the jellyfish is a very popular. I mean, like I said, when you're talking about atmospheric beasts, it's a very popular depiction of them.
mhm.
And so it is an interesting concept. And I don't think, just spoiler alert, if you guys want to hear the Wild and Weird West Virginia episode, I don't think that they're here on purpose. I think that they're accidentally here.
Hmm.
you know, for whatever reason. I think that it is some type of ultra terrestrial, extra dimensional, interdimensional, whatever it is you refer to these creatures. I don't think that it is a terrestrial thing that lives here. I don't think we're going to find a colony of them living here naturally.
Mhm.
So, and I don't think that they fly here from space and then stay for a little bit and leave. They seem very confused when they're here, actually, and miserable. They don't seem to enjoy it a lot. So that's my takeaway from it. But that might be a rabbit hole that you might interest you in going down, just to kind of compare and contrast, that person's individual experience compared to, what's out there. So interesting. Very fun. But that's what
Sure.
I did this week. Um, and that's, I think, all the promotion that I'm doing right now. Oh, wait a minute. Silly me. I almost forgot. I think you guys maybe might want to hear an update about what's going on with the show. Rebecca, you don't know this, and that's fine. Well, maybe you do. Maybe I told you about it. I've been searching for a co host for the show.
Hmm.
And that search has been going actually very well, too well. um, I've had some really fantastic people. Um, for everybody listening today, I have a secret, and you're not going to know it right now. You're going to know it very soon, but you're not going to know it right now. So there's a huge update getting ready to happen. But as far as co-host goes, I have chosen. There are going to be two new co-hosts on Wednesdays We Talk Weird. It is going to look a little bit differently than you guys might expect. They are going to alternate weeks, but they are people that you'll get to know just as much as you know me and just as much as you knew Pat O. So look forward to that. I will have them come on and kind of announce themselves. Haven't really decided how that announcement's going to go, but it's going to be big and it's going to be great and it's going to be wonderful. On top of my secret that you guys are just going to have to wait for because it's the holiday season and I'm busy. So there's that. Other than that, that's all I have going on. So let's get into you and why you're here and what it is that you do. Rebecca, tell the audience, give them a little Cliff Notes version of who you are and what you do in this community.
Okay, so I am a psychic medium and spiritual practitioner, and I specialize in the frequencies of ghosts, otherworldly creatures, and or non-human entities, depending on how you want to look at it, and spirit guides. And I had been seeing stuff on and off for most of my life. And when I say see, I'm going to preface that by saying perceive, which I can get into psychic language, etc., if you want me to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I didn't understand a lot of what was going on for most of my life up until about 2018. I moved to one of the most haunted places, and I would say underrated haunted places in the United States, which is Wilmington, North Carolina. I'm still here. We have a long history of a lot of dramatic things happening here, which makes a lot of ghosts. And I've always connected well with ghosts, and I did a ghost tour. Some more things happened. I started to acknowledge more of the things on how I was perceiving spirits. And then, first on TikTok, I started to share creepy photos that I could not explain. And I was just actively asking people, like, hey, any idea how you can explain this creepy photo? And after everything with pandemic was going on, during lockdown and everything, I moved into a bus and everything closed up. I had been a professional producer, performer, and playwright for most of my life at that point, and I didn't know what to do. And I was really just trying to scratch the itch of the performance and the playwriting. And so I had this idea of finally writing out some of the exchanges that I had with these spirits. And I called them my reenact or my ghost skits playlist or reenactment playlist on TikTok. That took off and it's been taken off ever since.
I think that's a fantastic origin story, though. I love that. So hold on, wait a second, because you said something that I haven't heard yet on the show. Did you just tell me that you lived in a bus?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I miss it, to be honest.
You don't live in the bus now.
No, they don't like buses and people living in them inside of city limits, and I had to
Oh,
make a very tough call because I loved it living downtown because it's just there's so much availability to walk, and that's something I'm very passionate about, being able to walk to work and where I'm going and that sort of thing.
Right.
And yeah, the city of Wilmington was not a big fan of living out of a vehicle. Even if you do clean up after yourself, they got laws against that kind of thing. So made a tough call, and one day perhaps I will live in a vehicle of some sort again. My life I've lived kind of like a vagabond for a long time, following
Sure.
different theatrical gigs and that sort of thing. So who knows, maybe something in the future, but I lived the schooly life for about 2 years.
Wow. So, oh, okay. I guess ghosts, I've heard those before. Living in
Yeah.
a bus. Come on now.
Or ghosts living in a bus. Ha, there you go.
Well, wow. My haunted house, but it's a bus.
It's a bus.
Um, I mean, ghosts want to go places too, you guys. They like to travel. So,
That did happen. So if that's something you want to hear about, we
I
can get
do. I
into
do.
that.
Okay, let's start from the beginning of the bus. How did you what kind of bus? Are you talking like a school bus?
Yeah, it was. It was a specialized vehicle that was originally built for the Police Department. It was a 1991 Chevy bus, and it ran off of gas, which was its own sort of complication with getting it fixed. But it used to be a SWAT vehicle.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So a bunch of guys would be in that vehicle and they'd all storm out of this bus, which I'm like, it's kind of funny to me. We see these SWAT vehicles, but like the idea of them popping out of a bus just seems comical to me. But yeah, it was refurbished by some other folks and I bought it and yeah, lived out of it for a few
How
years.
did you find a bus to buy?
So I love tiny homes. I have been I just like looking at them. I had been looking on different social media platforms and that sort of thing. And then all of a sudden I'm like scrolling through Facebook and there comes this ad for this bus. And I was like, oh well, how close could it be? Oh my goodness, it's like 10 miles away. So I look at it, I was like, oh. And this was like 2020. I remember I was working at a theater camp at the time,
Mhm.
and I had no real gigs after that and the ghost tour, and I didn't know
Right.
where my next paycheck was coming from because theater wasn't open. So I was just like, well, I don't know if I'll be able to continue to pay rent, but I can buy this bus. So that's what I did.
I love this story. I love everything about it.
And that's
That's
my
what I
spiritual journey. It's part of
yeah.
it. So
Yeah, no, no, it really is. No, I did something very similar. I didn't buy a bus, but um, I got into my career because I just had lost my job. So my company had sold in like mid-February, so right
Mhm.
before the pandemic happened. So as I am getting interviews for different jobs, they're all canceling on me. They're like,
Ah,
and I'm like, are we going to reschedule? And they're like, are you serious right now? I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I don't, everybody closed, So of course somebody was hiring. And I was like, I guess this is the universe's way of telling me to do this. This is my job now. This is what I do full time. I investigate and do stuff.
yes.
So that's how I
Awesome.
started. So it is really interesting you know how that works. It sounds kind of crazy in the moment just to go buy a bus and live in it. But so was the bus already refurbished for living? Is that my understanding?
It was. I did want to build something. And, I may do that at some point. I'm also a very creative kind of person. When I was producing theater, I loved getting involved in many elements and collaborating with other people. So it so happened to be turnkey, essentially. Just very old, very grumpy. Called her Bethel. She did her best. Uh, she was called Bethel the Brick. She was very heavy for being
Oh my god.
25 feet. So
Oh wow. And yeah, and I imagine it's not like, I mean, if you live in your sedan, I'm sure you could get away with that for quite a while. But when you become bus girl, it's hard to ignore the city's pleas for you to stop living in it. So
yeah, yeah. I had to play it safe on that one because I was just like, it's obvious. Plus, I mean, by that time, a lot of people had already known me. They knew that I was living in the bus. They knew what the bus looked like because, of course, I
right.
was very excited about it. I painted it some funny colors. And yeah, everybody would have also known that it was specifically me living in that place. And
Right.
I didn't need that either because at that point,
True.
I think one of the scarier things, which turned out to be very wholesome, One of the scary things to happen to me at that point was there was this car full of people. I was headed to a ghost tour because I was working ghost tours at the time. This car was going one direction down a street, made a U turn in the middle of the street to park next to me, ran over the curb. And I'm thinking I'm about to die. Like I'm just like, I've got like this stick with me that I use as a walking staff, and I'm like holding it tighter, like I think I might die. And these people pop out of their car. It's a bunch of like, I don't know, maybe early 20 somethings. And they're like, "You're Rebecca the ghost guide." And I was like, "Yeah." And they said, "We love your TikTok." I was like,
Oh,
"Okay." And then they kind of looked at me and how I was petrified. And they were like, "Oh, sorry, sorry. We didn't mean to scare you." And I'm like, "Yeah, you succeeded." So I didn't need that showing up to my bus at odd hours of the night, you
yeah.
know?
Well, I think about that a lot because that is just in the social media world. That's a very popular thing right now. Is living in your vehicle, and I would imagine it would make you a very easy target.
When people can recognize, and that was another thing to consider, like, do you go stealth and live a van life where you just kind of look like a cargo van sitting on the side of the street, which could also have the cops called on it, let's be real, depending on the
Right,
neighborhood you're staying in.
right.
Or do you just get more room and have the bus? So, but once again, it was 2020. Did anybody really know what was going on? I was like, I can buy a bus and I can have a roof over my head, sort of. That's it.
And get to where I'm going. It's, two in one. Cars and houses are expensive. I mean, I don't blame you.
Yeah.
So you sold the bus. You don't have it anymore.
Yeah, Bethel has moved on to a new owner. I wish them well. I do miss that bus life. And as I said, it might happen again. And I know my fans also miss the bus life. They're like, what happened to the bus? And I'm like, I don't want to talk about it. I made a decision. I made a compromise and I miss the bus.
Oh, that's well, because it is. I mean, at that point, it becomes its own character.
Yes.
So okay, so you had a ghost companion with you in the bus. Is this my understanding?
Yes. Okay. So his nickname is Jimothy. That was the name that
Oh,
we kind of chose for him, but amongst my friends and I at the time. He is from a local historic site. It is called Fort Fisher. That was where the last stand of the Confederacy was. It was the last opening to a port city for the Confederacy. Um, Went out there to film with some friends. It's a YouTube video called Seance at Fort Fisher. And one, it was hardly a seance. We really just offered rum to the spirits and we're like, hey, do you want to talk? so, um, but we went out there, and then a friend of mine, who's now the deity reader on my readers team, she had picked up on a guy who wanted to hang out more. And we established first that it was somebody we had nicknamed Pie Guy because we figured out he really liked apple pie. And from there, we're like, well, we can't really call you Pie Guy. And then we just sort of fumbled around a name and we came up with Timothy. Is Timothy his legal name? Absolutely not.
well, I mean, it's fine if it is. Like,
I mean, no hate, but yeah, Timothy, he passed when he was hardly 18. He passed in the battle there, the second battle there, I should say. And he became a very good friend of mine. And, something we talked about very early on, just because I wasn't going to have somebody who was like, yeah, South will rise again, living with me. I've got some issues with that fundamentally. So we had a lot of talks about how things had changed. We had talks about Black history. We had talks about the Confederacy, and we even looked in some of the manuscripts on what it originally stood for. And Jimothy, he was just a poor farmer. He was drafted. It was just, and I'm not saying that to make light of the subject or anything.
sure.
But we had a lot of conversations on that. We watched some documentaries on the civil rights movement, on the Reconstruction era. And it was a wonderful lesson too, because I think a lot of people are under this impression that ghosts are so stuck in time. And while that may be true for some of them, when there is a spirit that is looking to grow, I am it just in my experience, I have seen that able to happen. I've seen them be able to be more in the present, where they know what's going on from day to day. They don't have to be confused. And that's something that certainly happened with Jimothy. We had a lot of conversations on very topical things, and he vibed well, and he hung out on the bus. Like he would pop between the bus and Fort Fisher. I think the farthest we got away was 6 hours. We went to
Oh, wow.
Asheville, or nine at the time. Um, and yeah, it was a funny thing. Always on Sundays, for some reason, he would go back to the fort, and then for other parts of the week, he'd come back, hang out, see the world. That's what he wanted. He was like, I want to get out of the fort. I want to see the world. We did not make it so far as to see the world. The bus did not want to go far outside of North Carolina.
Sure.
She got very rickety, and she was like, I'm not feeling it. um, so yeah, he hung out for some time. Now I he resides more in spiritual space, rather
Sure.
than sharing this plane of existence. But goodness, it was what, a few weeks ago. My current partner and I went to the aquarium, and called him up, and he was like, "Yeah, the aquarium's right near Fort Fisher," and we hung out with the guys again, and it was really good. So,
That's awesome. I was going to ask, yeah, if there's been contact or if maybe
oh
like
yeah,
Jimothy's popped back into the bus and it's not you, it's some other, it's the
oh no
Fort
no,
Introducing people
we
that
wouldn't have
bought
let
it.
that happen. Yeah.
You're like, no wonder why she got rid of the bus. It's haunted.
Yeah, well, funny thing,
Oh,
there's this one video, it was a trend that was going on where it was talking about the song You're Enough. It's like, You're
sure.
enough, you're enough, you're enough, like that kind of thing. I don't know if that means anything to you. I did not sing that entirely on pitch, but um, it was this one trend, and I did it as a joke because Jimothy was like, "Oh man, I wish I could do the things that other ghosts could do, like turn on light switches and basically do paranormal things."
Hmm,
And I did 3 shots of him. And this is on my Instagram and my TikTok. And on one of the shots, I went to the top of the bus because there was a little patio area up there. And there's this outline. It is the coolest thing. There's like this outline there. And then I shoot on the back of the bus. And some people said that they saw an outline there too. There's another one where it was at the door of the bus. And that one, I didn't see an outline, but you get the people who are like, I saw him every time. And I'm like, good for
right.
you. He needs that confidence. So like he has shown up in some ways. We also got, there was a temperature anomaly that we used. We had one of those temperature sensory things. I don't know
Mhm.
the words for the paranormal investigation equipment. I just know what they do. So
That's okay.
but we had him show up on that, which was really cool. But yeah, he's just chilling. He's living his best afterlife, and we have a pretty casual sort of understanding. But he was like a brother to me for years, and I'd still say the same now.
Wow. I think that that is probably the most wholesome. I think that when people think of ghosts, right, they think of people that are involved in the paranormal. Of course, their expectation is the spooky, scary ghost story, and I don't think they expect to hear a really wholesome tale like that. So that's wonderful.
Welcome to my channel.
Perfect.
And that's one thing too, because I get this question a lot. They're like, "Oh, you have such wholesome ghost encounters," and it's not that everyone is. And some of my reenactment skits are me talking about ghosts, like making fun of me or looking at me like I'm crazy,
Right.
or I've also told stories of some of the scarier things. And I've certainly I take consultations with people.
Hmm.
I call them consultations because they're not just readings. I'm also teaching psychic language based upon what the individual's skill sets are. And we look into that. And it goes back to one of my beliefs where I do believe that we all have intuition. I do believe that we can all reach, basic theta state. Most of us do it before we go to sleep and then when we wake up again. I don't want to gatekeep any of this process because I do think that if you really have a passion for it and a curiosity, that you can do this. And I see that more and more, not just in my own line of work, but with many other people talking about their experiences.
Hmm.
So, all that to say, yeah, I've seen scary stuff. It's usually, oh
Sure.
goodness, I've got lives where I go in and talk about the things, I describe the stuff, and people are like quaking at home and they're like, get out of there. And I'm like, look, I would not be here if I were not shielded, if I did not trust the spiritual folks around me who mean me well. Um, And at any point, if I ever feel threatened or scared, I will leave because I recognize that's not a good energy for me to be in. I do a lot of work to not get there, but I'm also human and stuff happens. So I always give myself grace.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I mean, I think that, as much as, of course, we can't influence every single thing around us. I think intent is much stronger than people realize. And I think that if you are going in to find something spooky and scary, well, you're going to find something spooky and scary.
Mhm.
And I think on the opposite end of that, if you're just going in to have an experience, then you can have an experience that's not horrifying.
Yeah. Well, okay. This actually brings up a good topic because I've talked about this some on my channel before. And on my channel, I called it reader bias and reader bias matters.
Okay.
The thing is that you don't have to be a reader per se for this to affect. It's bias. So, for example, it's exactly what you just excuse me, it's exactly what you just said, where you said, well, if you're expecting to find something big and bad, you can do that. But
Hmm.
at the same time, you can do that in life too. I try to compare
Yes.
spiritual to what we understand here as, humans trying to do our best. If you
Right.
want to find bad things, you absolutely can. If you want to find good things, you absolutely can. I try to come at it at a basis of being like, I'm going to go find things. And whether they turn out to be good or bad or in the middle or whatever is just what happens. But I never want to put that kind of expectation or blinders, if you will, on what I'm looking for. I simply want to experience.
Yeah. And I'd agree that that is a huge issue with people that create the content and people that consume the content. Both.
Mm-hmm.
We see it all the time. What's the most popular word thrown around? Demons, constantly,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not demons. you
There's so
they're
much
just.
out there. Yeah, like they may just be inhuman, which inhuman does not equate to bad. Another thing you mentioned earlier was like what I understood as different planes of frequencies or planes of existence,
Mhm.
what I forget what you call them, the jellyfish in the sky.
The atmospheric beasts. Yeah,
Yes,
that's
thank you. I did like jellyfish in the sky and I was like, jellyfish in the sky. um,
perfect.
that's how I make light of things. Just like I don't get it, but I can sing about it. So that's that. Um, but when I think of planes of existence, because people are like, where to go sit? Like, are they sharing this plane? Are they on another plane? Oh yeah, yeah. Like we've got, and this is a physics thing too, which I love how
Mhm.
science is digging into this. We've got planes above, planes below, planes to the side, planes to the right, to the left, planes going sideways.
Mhm.
And it's just such a cool, unique thing when we are able to be on a place at a time and are able to perceive the things around us that are happening as well. It's
Yeah.
mystery of life stuff, which I think is fascinating.
Yeah, somebody got into a big argument with me one time over physics, and here's the thing: is that I'm a proud college dropout, and
It's not for everybody. I do not judge.
it's well, I was a young parent, so things happen,
Oh yeah, so a
but
lot going on.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it was family or education, whatever. But I went to school for astrophysics. That was my thing, and somebody was arguing with me dimensions one day. And one thing that people don't comprehend so well about dimensions, and here's the thing about dimensions: you're not stupid if you don't comprehend it. That's kind of the point.
Sure.
That we're not meant to comprehend that subject because we are third dimensional creatures. So when you're talking about dimensions, you are talking about a perception that you view. It is something that is happening all around you all the time, but you don't necessarily take note of because it is constantly happening.
Yep.
And being third dimensional, that means that we perceive our reality in three different dimensions, and those three different dimensions are width. They're width, length, and height. I mean,
Mhm.
it's that simple. It is essentially like looking at a box, and it is a box. We know it's a box. We know what a box looks like. We can perceive it that way.
Mhm.
Then when you start talking about further and further dimensions, you're talking about a perception that we simply don't have. You're talking about when you start getting into the fourth dimension, now you're talking about time is what that is. And we can only perceive time on a linear line, on just one line. We can't perceive time in, guess what, width, length, and depth, or I'm sorry, width, length, and height. So it becomes very confusing at that point. And then you can get into the fifth and the sixth and the seventh, and then it's infinite past that point. Um, and so, again, these are things that are happening all around us all the time. These are perceptions of our daily life that we use to live in the world that we live in. And
Hmm.
some of these things, and this is why I do all of it. This is why I study everything, because I feel like there's a huge connection between all these things. Sometimes you call it ghosts, right? Sometimes it's ghosts. Those ghosts have a different form of perception, and
Hmm.
even though we don't see them all the time, we can't constantly perceive them. However, they very likely constantly perceive us, in whatever way they choose. I mean, of course, they might not like be here right now in your house, or they could be, or they could be,
I mean, if we're
and
talking my house, but go on. Yeah.
probably your house. Yeah, they're probably your house right now.
I have
You
friends.
know,
It's cool.
they hey, you know what? They can come over here. I've let them. I'm like, don't touch my shit. Clean up after yourself. You're good. That's my rules. But the thing about it is that just like we are people walking around everyday humans, we have bad humans.
Hmm.
Of course, why wouldn't there be bad ghosts, spirits? Sometimes they're aliens. It just depends on what terminology. Pick your flavor. Why couldn't there be bad versions of those? It's essentially the same thing. Doesn't necessarily mean that it holds some type of special power like a demon would. Which maybe they do. I mean, because again, they can perceive us differently and live in a different form than we do. Obviously, they already are kind of better than us, is my opinion. But, again, just because there's a bad ghost, because it's just going to be bad, it doesn't mean that they are instantly the most horrifying. So, same thing with your interaction when you interact with different people.
Yeah.
If you meet a stranger and you already have a preconceived notion that they're a bad person, you're going to automatically be very closed off. You're not going to be very receptive to even introducing yourself to them. You're going to have a bad time. That first impression is not going to be a good one compared to if you are meeting, I don't know, your favorite celebrity.
And even then, you might get surprised.
Even
So.
then, most of the time, yeah, they say don't meet your heroes for a reason, kids. But yeah, I mean, you're automatically going to go into it knowing that you're excited, that you want to be in the situation. So the interaction is expected to be better because of the way. But, well, like Rebecca just said, sometimes it's not, just because guess what? That person that you're meeting is still an asshole. It's just the way it is.
Or, something else to consider, and I appreciate you offering basic humanity to spirits because that's another big part of my platform, is how things can change too. If we can't look at each other as all good or all bad, so how is it fair to put that expectation on something that we may not even understand? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And well, like, and you were saying, I like that you said, things change because people do, you could have
Hmm.
been a terrible person and then you're reformed, or you could have been a great person that became terrible because of whatever's happened to you in your circumstances. That is a possibility. So if somebody says that a property that happens to be open nightly and plays country music and there's drinking and alcohol there, that there are demons coming out of the basement and the drain. I mean, I guess I'd be pretty grumpy too if I had to listen to country every single night of the week. So,
Well, I think too, sometimes people will put demon on something that they don't understand, which is also very unfair because he, a demon is a very specific type of otherworldly creature.
right.
They have different morals. When we're talking to non-humans, they're going to have different understandings, different perceptions, different morals. Even one thing that you said earlier with, do ghosts always perceive us? I've had that question before too, and I counter it by saying, well, do we as people always perceive one another? How often are we on our phones walking by somebody and we miss them? How often are we just in our heads, or how often are we highly emotional about something and we don't see each other? So once again, offering that kind of humanity to spirits, and even offering that kind of understanding of potential humanity to even otherworldly things that we don't understand, it can go a long
Mm,
way. And go figure, in my humble experience, that's how a lot of folks are more willing to talk, because they're like,
yeah.
huh, you're not a total jerk to me. Sure, I'll bite. I'll answer a few questions for you.
Right. And that's absolutely. And, you kind of, I know that one thing that you do is you help people kind of realize their potentials, I guess, for lack of
Mhm.
better term. So when you're in this process and you're helping another human, right, a human being kind of realize their realities, how much of that is like shadow work and taking accountability for themselves?
Oh, goodness. Okay. So, a thing I often say in my consultations is that I am not a mental health professional. And in my understanding, especially with my personal story, I could not open up spiritually and understand a concept beyond myself before I understood myself.
Right.
So, part of that is shadow work. We say shadow work. I consider shadow work and mental health the same thing. It just sort of depends on if you want to turn it into a spiritual practice in addition to looking at your shadows. So, in that regard, I do talk a lot about that. And a lot of opening up to being able to have these perceptions is believing in yourself. Like, it really comes down to, do you believe in yourself? Do you believe that you are enough? Do you believe that you can whatever? A lot of the things that I work on with people, the tips that I provide, yes, they're working for spirits and that connection, though you can also pair them with working with other people as well. It's knowing oneself in order to know the world around us better, and then knowing even further those other dimensions that are out there.
Yeah. And it's magic.
Yeah.
It is. And there's science to back that magic. But there is some magic at play here when you take on introspection as a priority. And I know all about it. So it sounds like you're kind of so we had Catherine on, and you said you had listened to that episode a little bit. Catherine, we kind of joked that she was the dad from Casper because she's the ghost therapist. And so, are you like a motivational speaker for ghosts? Then is that
Oh, goodness. See, another content creator friend suggest to me to embrace ghost rehab.
okay?
Because that is a lot of my work. A lot of my work. I mean, yes, I work with people, though when I'm talking with ghosts, sometimes it's just allowing them space to not be performative, and also to
Right,
have choice. That's a huge thing. When I've been out on paranormal investigations, a huge pet peeve of mine, if I'm going to work with somebody, is whether or not they allow the spirit choice. I really don't do well if there's somebody being like, no, you have to do this, you have to do that. Maybe they take off their shirt for some reason and try to,
oh,
you know who I'm talking about. Um,
oh, okay, yeah. I was like, she must have seen my ghost hunts before. I don't.
Okay, I'll be real. It's one thing if it's like a woman doing that, because like you can ask.
Oh,
Like, I'll be real. I was on an investigation with Catherine, and we were at Old Jail St. Augustine, and we straight up asked these guys because they tried to scare us off, which was fantastic. The evidence that Catherine got that night was fantastic, and after a while, they couldn't scare us off, and so we heard them kind of like going back and forth and being like, "Ah, it didn't work." So finally we were
oh,
like, do you like alcohol? We got some feedback. And then a bunch of us, the most of us there that night were women identifying. And we were just like, do you like boobies?
yeah.
And like the Phasma box erupted. It was so great.
I'm just saying, everybody likes boobies.
See, but the thing is, though, that's consensual. If you're going to ask the spirit
Yes.
something and they come back, then it's one thing to show, and I'm fine with that. It's another thing, to do that as bravado, or to do that to like make someone angry or something like that. Like, I'm not into that noise. Um,
It usually takes me a minute to come up with the titles of these episodes, but I already know I'm going to call this one "How to Seduce Ghosts."
oh, if I had known the title of that one, I could have told you about a sex worker who I befriended and a spirit sex worker from the early
Oh,
1800s. She could tell you how to befriend a few ghosts or how to.
she's like, it's very lucrative over on the other side. You guys should join.
Oh, talking to her is fascinating. It is just absolutely fascinating.
I bet. Wow, I have many questions. Well, first of all, good for her.
Oh yeah. Well, I'll tell you something. I asked her later. I was like, "Why do you do this?" Because money doesn't work the same way, especially when you're aware of yourself and you have that sentience on the other side.
Right.
I knew it wasn't something she was stuck in and felt like she had to repeat, this process to get better or get money or something.
Oh,
And she told me that it was a way to actually wake wayward spirits up. I was like, okay, explain that to me. So there are a lot of dudes in Wilmington that are ghosts, far more than there are women. And a lot of them, they're stuck in a repeat. They are not always fully aware of themselves or where they are or anything that's going on around them. And then, of course, sometimes these quote bad ghosts are just really confused ghosts. And okay, granted, I'm not gonna sit here and be like, oh, bad ghosts are confused. Yeah, we could say that, but sometimes we gotta be like, hey, don't hit me, don't touch me, don't,
right.
like chill out. So she explained to me that when a spirit is stuck in that loop, they're only thinking about so many needs. One of those needs happens to be sex and attention and
Hmm,
feeling connection to one another. So I wouldn't say necessarily it is the act of sex itself. It can be, but it's really connecting to another person in a unique way that makes you feel human. And she explained to me it's part of what she does to assist guys to wake up and be able to ask the important questions of why am I here? Do I need to be here? Could I be somewhere else? Which could lead them to either making the decision to stay and learn or the decision to move on their own to whatever may be in the next realm, life, etc. for them.
so she's kind of the oh my gosh, I can't remember the guy's name that runs the boat to get everybody across the river Styx to get him to the other side.
Ah,
I
ah,
can't remember his name.
I know who you're talking about.
But instead of a boat, it's her vagina.
Essentially, yeah. And she charges for it. She's still like,
Oh,
if a guy's gonna come up to her, she's gonna be like, "Do you have coin?" And it doesn't matter what time period it's from. It doesn't matter what he's wearing. She just accepts it because that's what you do.
so they have okay, so they have currency. They do have a currency that they use.
It's energy. It's kind of like how some people will see spirits
Mhm.
dressed in different ways. I've heard of this happening before where it's like sometimes the ghost is in a gray jacket and sometimes he doesn't have a jacket at all. It's the same thing. It's
Hmm,
if you can believe that it's there in spirit, you can have it, which might sound really alluring when it's like, oh, so I can have as much money as I want. Well, you can't exactly buy all the things that you want if you're going to share this physical plane. You could
right.
go over to spirit plane and your imagination is your best friend.
Hmm.
But yeah, there are all kinds of things. It's really if you believe in yourself and if you believe that you can do something, lo and behold, there you go.
Fair enough. Okay. Well, so then you don't necessarily need to have money because you could have a physical well, you could have an item, I guess,
Mhm.
is more so. Except for, something that might involve somebody else, it sounds like sex.
Mhm.
Um, so, okay. So I'll back up a little bit and I'll get a little more serious because now I'm getting a little silly. And, just out of pure curiosity, just based off of what you can you perceive how they perceive the world around them?
See that also will sometimes require a particular level of sentience on their part. So there's two
Okay.
ways to do it. And one way that I do, especially if somebody's really confused, I will read the energy around them. And sometimes the energy around them may provide pictures or memories. Sometimes a spirit can say, hey, I remember this. Can I share this with you? Now, in a perfect world, they always ask that. In the reality that we're in, I remember this one occasion before I understood anything of what I was doing. I saw how a man was killed. And I saw it from his perspective. And all the
Wow.
while, I just sat down with my cider at a local pub that used to be another building, and I saw it happen. And I was just like, huh. Afterwards, the guy looked at me. He had walked behind me, shared the memory, walked in front of me, and said, I need somebody to know that I died here. And I was like, and I was chosen. And he told me his name, he told me his age, and he said, nobody knows that I died here. I found out later that, and at the time, I had no reason to believe anything that just happened. I saw a very
Sure.
classy establishment. I heard jazz, and I saw men in suits. You know, this guy from his viewpoint was kneeling, and I saw it happen. Thing is, though, later on, I found the history of that building. It used to be a really swanky hotel with a lot of mob activity. So suddenly it made sense. But at the time, I did not believe myself. I was just like, I guess I just had a daydream or something.
This alcohol is strong.
I
This
was like,
cider.
I had hardly even sat. Like I hadn't. Even, I was waiting for my friend. I hadn't even had a drink yet. Maybe I'd had a sip tops, but I was just like, what's going on? Why is this happening to
Oh,
me?
oh no.
It doesn't happen like that anymore. As I said, that was before I understood basic shielding and consent and how that can work spiritually as well.
Interesting. That is a very interesting that's a very interesting insight into how that kind of plays out because when you help people, I'd imagine there's some degree of you going into their psyche and being able to perceive things. So then, I just kind of, I don't know, assume that it's the same for ghosts. Is ghosts even, is that a term that you use? Is it derogatory? Is it correct? What do you think about that?
Well, I appreciate you asking that. I think that's really considerate.
I've always been curious.
I would say it's kind of like asking for one's pronouns. If you're going to talk to a spirit, it may be better to define them as spirit until otherwise told that you can refer to them as a ghost. I, generally speaking, for the populace to understand, I would say ghost.
Right.
Though I have certainly talked to spirits that if I said ghost, they would be like, I'm more than that. Like they would be insulted for some reason. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just treating everybody one by one and offering them that dignity and basic respect.
Well, I mean, there's been a lot of talk, especially with the government disclosure happening. Should we be calling aliens alien?
Mm.
Is that derogatory? I don't know. Maybe it, to the average person, I think it does make sense to still use ghosts because that's how they identify them. That's what they know them as. But I guess I would agree. Calling them a spirit seems more, I don't know. I feel like they feel a little more important that way.
Or even a soul to basically
So, okay.
acknowledge, that they have a soul. And once
Right.
again, as I said, I do relate it to asking about somebody's pronouns. You
Yeah.
never really know unless you ask. And the best thing you can do is try to respect wherever they're at and what they want to be called.
Interesting. Very interesting. So I mean, clearly you are very much into the whole consent thing. I think that is beautiful. I think that, you know, that's not really something that we see a lot in this field. And I think that you're clearly getting results because you respect that space. Are these things or these people, these souls, these spirits, whatever, do you think that they're attracted to you because they sense that from you? Because like Catherine was saying that they recognize who she is, even if she's never
Hmm.
talked to them before.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. So, funny thing, and this is also goes back to the time where I didn't trust the abilities and the experiences that I was having. Back when I was doing ghost tours, my favorite stop was at the Bergwin Wright House. It's a historic home here in town, and it's one of the oldest structures left from the colonial period. And me going about my life, whenever I would walk by that house, I knew that folks were around. I didn't exactly know exactly who was around and if it was the stories, if they lined up or what. But I would always just say hi. Like whenever I'd walk by there on the sidewalk on the way down to the river to do the tour, I'd always be like, "Hey, everybody!" And in my mind, I was like, "I wonder if they're saying hey back." They totally were. I just did not trust myself to be able to perceive that.
Sure.
Whenever I was out there, though, I noticed we would get a lot of photos, and I would always encourage people to take many photos at the site. But it wasn't only me that was getting all these funny photos, or the groups that I was with. It was also other tour groups. They always said they knew when I was around. They either knew when I was coming up to the house or about to leave the house, because the paranormal activity would start to spike.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
once again, I was just treating them like people. You roll up and it's like, oh
Right.
yeah, this place is really haunted. I'll just say hi to everybody. Like, hey, everybody, how's it going? And like, stuff would happen around town. I love talking to spirits, of course, and I love history. I have a great passion for history. I love preserving history. And in doing that and being able to communicate with spirits, and so many people are open minded here just because it is so haunted. Many people
Right.
have experiences, even if they don't believe that they can, until they have one that they can't ignore. And, I'm just that person that rolls in. I'm like, hey, everybody, do you want to talk? Like, do you want to get on this thing? I'm the one most likely to offer spirits cookies, whether they can eat it or not, up for you to decide. But they always get excited. I'll be the one to offer alcohol. Something that I have coming out later this week is an investigation. Catherine's a part of it. And we go to this haunted restaurant and we get some great evidence simply by offering spirits alcohol. Spirits for
Yeah.
spirits. Like,
It's just, yeah, absolutely.
it's a timeless sort of thing to just be like, hey, let's sit down and have a drink. And it's been very effective, and I think that's beautiful. It's just, once again, sharing humanity with them, sharing basic equality and kindness. And I'll be
Hmm.
real, if somebody's not going to be kind to me, then and I can show some spikes every now and then and be like, okay, well, fine, we're not going to talk to you. But
Sure.
if so and so over here wants a drink and wants to sit down and have a talk with us, we will do that.
Well, it's very much like having celebrity as a human. When you are a type of celebrity, people chastise you if you go
Mhm.
outside of what it is that you're known for. And as silly as that is, you kind of start to feel, well, not seen and not
Mhm.
valid.
Mhm.
So a lot of celebrities, though, I guess a trope is that celebrities will marry their high school sweetheart before they were famous, right?
Mhm.
They'll go back and start hanging out with people before they were famous,
Mhm.
because then they feel seen. And so I feel like that's probably what it's like to, especially these big, I like to call them big box haunted places, these very popular haunted places. They probably don't. They probably feel like you said, they have to perform. They feel like that's their duty, but nobody actually cares to see them, and that's not fun. It's not fun. It's not enjoyable to anybody.
Yeah. And I will say, depending on the location, I will use Old Jail as another example. Some of those guys in there, they love it. They love scaring the public. They love watching people scream. Like, it is fun for them. It is their entertainment. Though I also remember at Old Jail, there were a few guys that felt more trapped, and they really wanted to leave. And as a spiritual practitioner, I did what I could to assist with that. So it really depends. But once again, it comes down to the treat them as individuals rather than
Right.
lumping them all in one thing, just like we would do with society. It's better to look at the individual sometimes than it is to look at a mass of people and make an assumption.
And I think that's very beautiful. I didn't ask this, and I should have, but did you guys show them your boobs?
Ah, some people did. So,
Okay.
a companion that is oftentimes around me. His name is Rupert. He's also a part of the Ghost Kids playlist. Not every spirit I meet is on that playlist. Just so happens the three major ones did come up on this podcast. Um, he he had not said hardly anything during the investigation. He was just around to help protect me and make sure that nobody touched me, because I have a problem with that. At least not without consent.
Right.
So yeah, I was there for it. I was just like, oh yeah, sure. I mean, these guys, when were the last time they saw boobs? Like, whatever. I was about to go for it. The first thing Rupert said the entire night, I just heard no. And I was like, okay, never mind.
I got in trouble.
Yeah, I was like, oh well, all right.
Dang it.
Some other folks for the group, though. I mean, we were all kind of. It was February at that time, so it was kind of
Oh,
cold, and
yeah.
people were having to pull up their layers even down in Florida. Maybe some people did, but like it turned into just a bunch of us laughing, a bunch of them laughing, and then a bunch of them being like, "Well, you know."
Oh, poor guys. So, all these, so right now you're living, I know that you have roommates. I'm not going to get into very personal, but you live with other people, and you also live with these spirits. Do you have a lot that hang out with you all the time, or they just kind of come and go?
Goodness, they could not hang out all the time. They will tell you, they'll be like, she's sitting down looking at her phone again. How boring.
Well, fair.
So no, they come and go, and it's only people who I offer permission to, and even that number is very small. Like my
Mhm.
spirit guides, of course, and ghosts who I have befriended, and basically all of us get along. My roommate is also very spiritually inclined, and we also have a lot of conversations on what we're doing, just to be sure that we're checking in with each other and we're offering each other that kind of respect. Just like having a roommate over, or no, excuse me, having a friend of a roommate over.
Right.
If you're going to have some rando over, it's appropriate to be like, hey, I was thinking of this. But for the most part, if I'm going to meet with a spirit, I'll go to where they are. If I'm doing a consultation, I do not invite them here. I used to do that, and then some spirits didn't want to leave, and that was totally weird. And I was like, why is so and so's grandma hanging out here? Like it's kind of weird,
Right.
it's like I don't
Yeah.
recall giving this permission. So I kind of meet them in an in-between space, because in spirit, space and time don't matter, and so they do not have to be here for me to meet with them, and that's how I'm able to work with folks from afar.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Well, I mean, that's true. So does your roommate also have the same relationships that you do with the spirits that are consistently in your life?
So happens, yes, though I do not want to tell their story.
That's okay. So is it because they knew these spirits separately, or you were mutual friends, so like you set them up together, you played matchmaker? I mean, does it work that way?
I, I can. It's sort of like if you it's so funny talking about ghosts this way. Like even now, I'm just kind of like, oh yeah. Sometimes you go out and one ghost pops in because they're curious about something, and then so and so meets them and they become friends, and it's
Right.
just, I mean, that's kind of for those who are open to it. Call yourself sensitive or psychic medium, etc. It can very much be like that. The main thing is I'm always very just cognizant to be sure that I'm not living my life in spirit. Like
Right.
I have these very unique connections with those in spirit, and I'm very grateful for it. All the same, it's as I mentioned this past weekend, I didn't mention any ghosts about that. I was like, I
Yeah.
went to a pumpkin patch. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like there is that extra layer if one wants it to be there. But I always tell people too, just like how I'm continuing to explore the part of my physical life and those who are in the physical. And I get this question sometimes too. They're like, I get people online being like, so do you have like friends who are alive? And I'm like, yes, most of my friends are still here. Like, so yeah, just similar to that. I always want to bring it back to the life that I get in the here and now. It just so
Right.
happens that there's this other part that I'm very passionate about.
Yeah. So, do you have people who are, going back to just, I guess we haven't talked a lot about, humans and how you work with them, regular people. Clearly those people that you work with are receptive, or at least have started the path to being receptive to that type of information. But have you ever had an encounter with another person where they just maybe sensed it in you, and because it's something that they deny about themselves, have become, I don't want to say violent, but have become unpleasant towards you because of it?
Uh, I mean, do you mean like somebody physically feeling that way?
It's just like, somebody just so like clearly on the when you're on the internet and you do this kind of stuff, you'll get people that are like, "Oh, you shouldn't be messing with that stuff," how they do.
Ah,
But this is more like meeting somebody in person who is in such denial about themselves that they can't accept the fact that you are not in denial about yourself and you actually embrace it, and then they judge you based off of that alone.
yeah. This is where I would say I'm not here to try and convince everybody that I'm right because you can't do that. You know, this is belief. It's kind of like religion. You can't live a life being like, oh, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. Some people will do that. And if that's how they feel their prerogative is, then okay. All the same, I tell people all the time, I just want people to find what inner peace looks like for them. For some people, that will be being atheist. And I have no issue with that. Absolutely none. I know some people who are atheists and they have absolute peace with that. And that's what I want. I think mental health comes first.
Mhm.
So, whatever sort of path somebody is on that gives them peace and a feeling of fullness and a feeling of being enough, that is what's right for them. And yeah, I do get people who, tell me I'm wrong, I shouldn't be messing with this stuff, all that. And I always want to acknowledge that's their experience and they're entitled to feel according to their experience. If they believe that and that's what makes them safe, then that's what's right for them. I do have an issue with people trying to put that context on me just
Right.
because, especially if they don't know who I am and they make assumptions that all spirits are wrong. All the same, I can't argue with that because
Mhm.
they're going to believe what they believe. So I think the world is beautiful. I think we can have different opinions and still, exist with one another. The only difference is when somebody puts that opinion on somebody else. And that's when I have an issue.
And I agree with that with probably everything in life, in general.
Yeah.
you know, I live and let live. That's my thing. As long as you're not hurting other people, right?
Mhm.
And I think that that is very true. And I think it can be hard to navigate. I mean, would you say in those situations that it's confidence that kind of sees you through it?
For me, it's open mindedness and
Mhm.
curiosity. I always tell people if you're afraid of something, try to understand it.
Mhm.
That's how you fight the fear. I say this all the time. If you're afraid of something, do what you can to understand it. This comes from my background of being a Quaker, where I actively try to seek out mediation and peace and a middle ground,
Mhm.
looking at a perspectives from somebody else's viewpoint. And even if I don't agree with it, if I can at least try to understand where they're coming from and at least say, okay, that's right for you. It may not be right for me, though I respect your ability to believe that for whatever reason. Just with all due respect, please don't put that understanding onto me. And I will offer that to others as well.
I think that's a great thing. Conflict is hard in this community.
Yeah.
It's a hard thing to deal with. It's hard to not feel emotional when you're being criticized directly. So it's hard to respond in a very, I don't want to say mature way. It's not necessarily immature if you fire back and try to prove otherwise, but it can be hard to kind of feel that criticism. And I think that it is an important thing for us to try to be mindful of, because if we can't take the direct criticism, that means we can no longer have these conversations to even try to bring those people into our perspective of it if they were to want to understand. And that's why they're so critical to begin with. So I think it sounds like you do a good job of it. Not to say that I'm sure I'm sure it becomes emotional sometimes.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I don't want to sound like it never gets to me. I'm a
Mother
person.
Teresa of paranormal, sure.
No, 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 no. And you know what it comes down to, and this is kind of coming full circle a bit. It's mental health. How how you handle being attacked essentially
Hmm.
shows a lot about where you are.
Yes.
And you know, everybody can get angry. Certainly, I've been angry in like the last week. It's how you handle it. Something that I
Yeah.
work on in therapy is you can't choose how other people are going to react to you. You can choose how you're going to react to them.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I apply that to every area of my life that I can.
Yeah. No, I love that. I mean, a lot of the interviews we've done on the show very recently, has validated the fact that this is all a very personal journey.
Mhm.
And, I'm hoping that what the listeners take away from that is that it's personal. And, much like with the spirits, there's no one size fits all for all of us. We have to figure out what that looks like for us. So I guess with that being said, I'll hop off of my Oprah soapbox here. And where can people find you? Where can they follow you? Where can they take in some of your content?
All right, so TikTok's going to be my largest platform. You'll find me at the handle Rebecca the Ghost Guide. My name is spelled Rebekah, so Rebecca the Ghost Guide. I am also on Instagram and I am on YouTube. And YouTube, I would love people to check out my YouTube. I've got longer content there. I've got paranormal investigations. I've got going into cemeteries and graveyards and respectfully just trying to make reads. And one of the things that I really actively encourage on my YouTube is for people to make reads with us. Once again, space and time do not matter in spirit. And I want people to feel like they have more validations with the reads that they're getting and to feel it in a very fun way. I always tell people you don't have to believe in yourself. If you just want to try to make it up and see what happens or use your imagination, you might be surprised.
Very cool. Well, it was a pleasure having you on.
Yeah,
Um,
thanks for having me.
we'll go check out the demon drain together sometime or something.
I'm for it. Yeah, because here's the thing: I love otherworldly creatures and non-human entities, so I would like to get to the heart of what exactly is it. And
Yeah.
honestly, if it were a demon, I would be surprised. It's not the first demon I've met, but I'd be the first to be like, "Oh shoot, they were right." Okay.
I bet. Yeah. Yeah, and we'll probably talk more about that jellyfish situation too, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Cuz I'm interested. But yeah, again, thanks for coming on the show. And with that being said, guys, I'll see you back here next Wednesday.